Jeff Goldsmith, you may agree with some of this, but are we talking about all the right things when it comes to choice, competition, or improved health care?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a delegate from the business side of this field on this panel, and I must say, Tom, I just think it's sort of not a fair fight between government and this enterprise. I've been in this field for 43 years, and when I entered it, it was a $70 billion activity. It's now $3.6 trillion. It's the size of Germany. 16 million people work in it. 7 of the 10 smartest kids in your high school graduating class work in it somewhere. So, I mean, it's just, it's a formidable enterprise. And I often feel, I don't get to Washington very often, I often feel like the world I work in, I'm kind of a psychiatrist to those sumo wrestlers that you showed up a minute ago, is a completely different world than the one I read about in policy journals and hear about in political debate. I really believe that competitive forces could help discipline this colossus, but I have trouble figuring out where the leverage is exactly. And I think, you know, I read the report. I actually did. I got it at 10:30 last night.
I knew there was someone else.
Oh, dude. I mean, it was 370 footnotes. I mean, they really did their homework. I was impressed with this report. I thought it was a really thoughtful, well-done piece of work. And one of the most interesting things in it was this idea of what's a shoppable healthcare service. You know, Reggie sort of got at this in some of her earlier work. It's like, you know, we really need competition in this field, but where does the where can competitive forces actually be brought to bear? I'm also a cancer survivor, and I can tell you, you know, I wasn't consuming anything. This idea that I was a consumer while I was fighting the cancer was just offensive to me. I was drowning, and what I really wanted to figure out was who I could trust to deal with my problem, who I could believe to deal with my problem. Would I have chosen to go to the Cancer Treatment Centers of America because it was $5,000 cheaper? No, I probably wouldn't have. So I think you need third-party payment for stuff like that. But I also wrote a book about the imaging business 7 or 8 years ago. Imaging is the second largest high-tech healthcare market in the U.S. after pharma. It's about $250 billion. And it hit a technological flat spot in the late 90s and really hasn't advanced all that much since. Now, I look at this phone that I own. This is like a supercomputer. I paid $700 for it. But when I went to the University of Virginia to get an MR scan, which is a 50-year-old technology, they charged $5,300 for it. And I'm like, what's going on with that? Why doesn't an MR scan cost $500? Why doesn't a CT scan, which is a 60-year-old technology, cost $100? That's the question. Those are shoppable services. They're mature technologies. They're clearly commodities. So I'm kind of trying to figure out, like in my own head, well, how would you get from the $5,300 charge for an MR scan to a $300 charge? Well, I think consumers have to play a role in that process. They really do. And I think the way you get there is by fostering consumer awareness of the spread of cost of those commodity-type services and write them a check. Don't just absolve them of the cost share, but actually write them a check for $100 if they're willing to like drive down the road 10 or 15 miles to the $100 CT scan. I think we do have to give consumers a role in this process. But the issue of what a shoppable service is, that's a really important question. And it isn't the entire $3.6 trillion. We've got to figure out how to allocate the consumer's risk in a way that it doesn't expose them to financial harm, but does give them an opportunity to vote and to eventually find that $700 supercomputer.
Thanks, Jeff.